What's up, Canes fans? I am your host, Peter Ariz, alongside D-Money with this special edition of the CanesInSight podcast. D-Money dropping the bank as he does every week exclusively on CanesInSight. And if you have been listening to the show the last few weeks, then last night would not have been a surprise to you. Kevin Riley, running back out of Tuscaloosa, committing to the Canes. D, welcome to the show. And what do you have for us tonight?
Yeah, just got the latest batch of intel here for the bank. Again, like you mentioned, Kevin Riley, huge commit. You can check out the reaction pod to that you do with Brad Tejeda. That's on YouTube. That's on the website. That's on any podcast platform you have. Remember to like and subscribe to this podcast on YouTube or your podcast platform so you're getting these reaction pods and the latest. And also sign up to CanesInsight.com recruiting forum, 6.3 million posts and counting, the most active, exclusive info you can get on all these recruits. But yeah, Kevin Riley.
And free.
Biggest point of all. But yeah, as far as Kevin Riley, this is something we've been talking about, me and you, for feels like 2 months now. Everybody had always kind of ignored it because he was from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. They knew Alabama wanted him. Auburn wanted him. So the thought was, how could Miami be in the picture for this guy? Miami's been recruiting him extremely hard. He has been at the absolute top of the priority board. So, there's a lot of talk about Jarrett Gibson, who's a highly rated guy. Riley is the guy they wanted. Top 100 player, but their internal evaluation is even higher than what he's ranked. I mean, he is the guy, a running back from their perspective, so they're ecstatic. From their perspective, this is a whale commitment, particularly getting a kid from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, that Alabama wants. 5'11", he'll be 200 plus easily if he's not already. Sickle back. You see him in his highlights, not just running people over, not just breaking tackles, but also lead blocking on kick returns, just looking to knock people out. Shifty, he can make guys miss. He can take it to the house. Great vision, great patience. Really a complete back. He can catch the ball. So there's nothing about his game that is weak. It's not like he's a big, stiff back that's fast or a small, shifty back. He's all of the above, and Miami thinks he's a workhorse, NFL-type back, complete back, and really at the top of their board.
So, D, last year, as you mentioned in the bank, this was a big time of year for the Canes staff in terms of locking in some big-time commitments. Everyone's been waiting for that to happen this time of year. And that Riley news may be a triggering point, right? Because it seems like there was some good progress that was made this weekend with major targets.
Yeah, this weekend, there was definitely some progress. Those last weekend, which we talked about, had another podcast, a huge weekend. I think the next 10 days could be interesting. This is around the time when Miami really started heating up last year. Names to watch that could be maybe closer to a decision. I would say a guy like Aiden Breland, a Dylan Stewart, a Marquise Lightfoot who visits this weekend, David Stone. Those are some names I'm watching as potential guys to add to this class that Miami has huge grades on and are huge priorities for the class. So those are just some of the names. Next 10 days, I'm not saying like, next 10 days, guys are all going to commit or anything crazy like that. But I could see a flood soon in one direction or the other, hopefully towards Miami. I know Miami feels very good about the communication with all of those guys, including following other visits that they've taken.
So at the quarterback position, Judd Anderson has been committed for a while now, and he had an awesome performance last week at Georgia, 7-on-7, leading his team to the championship over there. But Miami's been pretty open with him from the beginning, right, that they were most likely going to take another quarterback in the class with him. You mentioned Colin Hurley a few episodes ago, and another guy to watch for, according to what you wrote in the bank, Trevor Jackson, someone that, they're excited to see over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, Miami loves Judd Anderson. Again, the intel on that camp he just had, they won the tournament at that 7-on-7, threw the ball beautifully. Power 5 schools are checking in on him. Judd's solid to Miami. So they love everything they're hearing about him, and they love him even more the more that he's been able to play. But you're talking about Jakari Brown and Emory Williams, and that's it on campus after TVD graduates. So they need numbers there, particularly with a guy like Judd, who may not be a day one type of ready guy. He's more of a developmental talent just because he's new to the position, only been playing in a passing offense really for a year. So I could see Miami going and adding another quarterback. In fact, I expect Miami to add another quarterback. Judd knows that. I'm thinking either high school or portal. In terms of high school, there's intrigue there with Trevor Jackson, Orlando kid, performed really well at the Elite 11, big arm. Your guy Bruce Feldman wrote him up, uncommitted right now. So he's someone Miami's looking at, interested in. It's not like he's official visiting next weekend, but they like to get eyes on him throwing the ball. Could come down and throw on campus, but that's the next step in that process, seeing him throw live to see if he's really a guy they're going to go after. But they're intrigued with what they've heard and seen from him.
Looking at the wide receiver position, a lot of things there that are making people on the message boards go a little crazy, right? You look at Jeremiah Smith from Chaminade. He's going to be taking an official visit to Miami this weekend. That has Canes fans very excited, but you don't seem to think that there's going to be much of an update to come after this weekend.
He is very much like a Brandon Inniss. Brandon Inniss, Miami was in it till the end. And if you don't believe that, he was having very long conversations with Miami talking numbers. So to me, that means you're in it with a player, especially when it's that close to signing day. The issue was, I just think he couldn't get over the way the team performed. He was begging Miami to give him a reason to go there. They didn't. He went to Ohio State. Jeremiah Smith's going to be in the same boat. The money will be there. The interest will certainly be there. But Miami needs to show that they can perform on the field as a passing offense. If they do that, I think this is a recruitment that could turn very quickly. But Miami needs to have a visit, show them around. That's going to happen this weekend, and just sort of lay the groundwork for what would happen down the road with a Jeremiah Smith, the best wide receiver I've seen down here since Andre Johnson.
Chance Robinson, wide receiver, committed to Miami out of St. Thomas Aquinas. That thread on CanesInsight's getting a little long, D. That normally isn't a good sign when it comes to guys and their recruiting sagas, right? But the staff feels like they should be able to solidify things after this weekend.
Yeah, we've seen some epic ones. I think Dalvin Cook might have had like 5 parts to his thread.
Alex Collins was pretty bad too, from what I remember.
Yeah, I'm looking at Chance Robinson.
Jerry Jeudy had to have been up there too.
There were like 5.0 versions of that one. Yeah. Chance is right now 70,000 views, 551 replies, 28 pages. So that's it's starting.
It's tame, but it's a long ways to go.
Well, it was quiet for a while. He was committed now, firmly committed now with the Gator interest is picking up. Look, there's real Gator interest there. I think Miami's confident that when they get him on campus this weekend, they're going to lock that in. Same thing. Miami performs well. That's going to make that a flip less likely. And also, the Gators, they did this last year. They got some commitments. They got some momentum. And ultimately, some of them fell through. They didn't have the NIL money. The team played bad on the field. The staff didn't close. They got their butt whipped by Miami on numerous recruiting battles. I think Miami's just got to do their thing. And I think the Gators are the type of team you want to recruit against. You want to recruit against the Gators because they're going to fall apart. Their schedule's tough. Their team is horrible. They have a terrible quarterback situation. That's the type of class that can fall apart and get picked apart. Someone like a Darius Hayes, the linebacker who visited Miami last week, kind of quietly, the stud out of Largo. Miami would love to land him. He's at the top of the linebacker board. And I think that kind of thing could happen as the Gator class. It's high right now, but I think this is probably as high as it's going to get. Maybe they get another guy, and then you're going to start to see the decline, and that's where Miami comes in.
Draylen Miller at the receiver spot. Miami still in the picture there, as you mentioned, Texas A&M and Miami battle. Corey Duff, another name to keep an eye on at kind of that wide receiver tight end position. But can Miami go to the West Coast twice for tight ends in this class? Davon Mitchell, guy that you've mentioned that's going to be reclassifying. Do they have a chance with him? Seems like he's coming in for a second time in a short number of weeks.
Yeah, let me just go piece by piece on that. Draylen Miller, Port Arthur, Texas. I heard from, I think our expectation here in Coral Gables is that is a Miami, Texas A&M battle. I've heard people that are plugged in say that the USC is really the team to watch there. I don't know. I think Miami's in the game there, but I'm not expecting Miami to land Draylen Miller, but we'll see. Corey Duff out in New York. Coach Duaso, Team Raw, he's been a stud for them in every single tournament they've played, made a lot of contested catches. I think Miami wants to see him in person and see him run, which should happen this week. Kevin Beard, a huge proponent of Corey Duff's game. You know he's has the height, 6'5", again, contested catch machine. Can he run well enough? He has a bad time on record from an earlier camp, but I've seen a lot of guys that go into the NFL that maybe pop a bad time and then get faster. Sheldrick Redwine had like a 4.77, I want to say, and ended up running like 4.4 at the combine. So those things happen. They want to see how he can run, and he could be someone that becomes a factor there. But yeah, tight end. Well, you have Caleb been the top targeted tight end out of Georgia, Carrollton, Georgia. He's on campus this weekend, but he will not be alone. Devon Mitchell out of California, Southern California, reclassified from 2025 to 2024. He's someone Miami loves, and he's committing in early July. So he's visiting Miami again. He's second unofficial, and he's going to commit. Miami's done a good job in that recruit, but that's definitely a name to watch who could be a major factor in this recruiting class, joining Elijah Lofton, also from the West Coast and Las Vegas. Who else did you mention and hit on there?
I think that the guys that I kind of went through there at the wide receiver and tight end spot. I think moving on, Justin Scott, there was a crystal ball for him this weekend that people were talking about. How do the Canes stand and look there?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that one's imminent or anything like that. There was a hope to push and get a commitment from him. That process might take a little longer. Miami's definitely in the game there. He really enjoyed himself on the visit. But, you're pulling him a pretty good distance. So I just think there's some work to do there just from comfortability standpoint, things like that. But Miami's there. Miami's working, and he had a good visit. But that's not something the hope was he'd be like Kevin Riley and committing, this week. I don't see that with him.
On the offensive line, a couple developmental names that you've mentioned: Derek Plaz, Moritz Schmoranzer. Obviously, don't know if I'm saying both of these guys' names completely correct, but looks like they have some intriguing upside, and we know how Coach Mirabal likes those guys.
Yeah, that's what this recruiting class is for offensive line. Last year was the big ticket items. This year's a down year nationally, so Mirabal. Plus, also, you spent all that money last year. You're going to spend a lot of that money on defensive linemen this year as far as NIL. So they're really focusing on developmental, high upside guys that you put some weight on, coach them up, and now they're also first round, second round, third round talents, right? But they're not the guys that you necessarily got them ready made like Sampson and Francis. And plus, those guys just aren't even in this class. There's no linemen the quality of Sampson Okunlula and Francis Malgo in this class just on paper. So it's a different route at that position, but you trust Mirabal, Cristobal. These guys know what they're doing there. Derek Plaz out of Jacksonville, 6'6", 270, but he's a leaner tackle, but he's going to be a 300-plus pounder pretty quick. He's got a nice frame, not a skinny, overly lanky guy. He'll be 300-plus, no problem. A lot of talent. He was committed to Penn State, ended up decommitting. Now it's going to probably be a Miami, North Carolina State battle. Penn State, you're as an NFL draft guy and an agent, Penn State is the number one tackle this year in the NFL draft. I forgot his name, the African kid. I think he's from D.C. But he's a number one.
Olusad, yeah.
Yeah, he's a number one offensive tackle in the country from Penn State. They developed him. I think he was a 3-star that they developed. North Carolina State, they had Icky. What's his last name?
Iquanu.
Iquanu from North Carolina State was a top 10 pick a couple of years ago at tackle. So both of those programs know what they're doing when it comes to these developmental, highly athletic tackles. And both of them are really hot at this. Derek Plaz, Mirabal, another guy who has NFL pedigree as far as guys he's produced. He loves the guy. So that's an intriguing guy, and Miami feels good about where they stand there. But that the name you mentioned, and we got this international flavor to these guys today. Yeah. Moritz Schmoranzer, originally from Germany, now at Roanoke, Virginia. Virginia Tech's in the mix. He visits Pittsburgh this week, kind of more local schools, but he's really a German kid. Love the Miami flavor, the international flavor. He said it is much different than other college towns. I heard that sometimes when these guys come on the radar late, Miami saw him late. They didn't see him in spring necessarily. They didn't really have the great eye on him. they just like the film because he was such an athlete. This guy was a German kid, receiver that grew into offensive line, very athletic on tape, but tape can be deceptive sometimes from a physical standpoint. So they're eager to see him live. Came down, said great looking kid in person, every bit of 6'5", good dimensions, and great personality. They said this guy's never been a stranger. He's friendly, very positive, and they just liked everything about him. A lot of times these visits, they can go two ways. They can say, we want this guy more than we thought, or, we thought we liked this guy, but now we've seen him, been around, and we don't want him. With Moritz, the arrow's pointing up in terms of interest. Miami likes him. He likes Miami. That's a big visit to Pittsburgh coming up, but that's one to watch as far as a guy they really, really like and has a lot of athletic ability and size.
And then probably the best of the offensive linemen we'll mention tonight is Sendre Afua from Seattle, big-time offensive guard. It's going to be a tough one to grab him all across the country, but there's a couple guys on the roster in Jaden Wayne and Malagoa who are pushing hard for him.
Yeah, and look, this guy is not a layup. I think Miami fans might have assumed he was a layup because he only had one visit scheduled for a long Miami. He since been to Utah. He's been to Texas A&M. That's a battle. I mean, it's not a slam dunk to Miami. He likes Miami. That's not a slam dunk at all. This visit's going to be huge. He knows Jaden Wayne. Jaden Wayne's from Tacoma, Washington. Afua from Seattle, Washington. I think they train with the same trainer, so they have a relationship. Malagoa, obviously the Polynesian connection. I believe they're both Samoan. Malagoa, originally a West Coast guy, played ball in California for a while before going to IMG. Of course, originally from the island itself. So those guys are going to work hard to try to bring this dude in. He is a major target. Miami loves him, but that's what the visitors are for. They're going to try to convince him that Miami's a spot for him. He came in the spring. Now is the real test.
Jalen Hayward at cornerback out of Rockledge. He will be visiting this weekend. He's been committed to Georgia, but as you mentioned, the Canes staff has been working on flipping him for a while.
Yeah, top 100 kid. He runs a 10.6 in the 100. A lot of people think he's a safety, but Miami views him as a corner because of his length and that 10.6 straight line speed. They want that at corner. They have a huge need at corner, as we all know. He's someone that Miami's been linked to for months. Miami's been working on him for months. Great relationship with Coach Adai. And now he's here. Now is time to really push and see if you can get him to decommit from the Bulldogs. Miami thinks there's a good chance of that happening. Again, not a sure thing. Georgia still wants him. He's still in the mix there, obviously. But Miami's going to try hard for a flip there, try to do what they did with Kevin Riley, and really make a move this weekend.
And then we'll wrap it up with a couple more skill position guys who recently were at Miami camp and really impressed the staff. First guy, Ja'Cory Barney, who I've seen a ton of at Palmetto last year. Obviously, he was on the same field as the Washington brothers. And to me, he was always, the Washington brothers physically and athletically would stand out. But Ja'Cory Barney, game after game, was making big plays on both sides of the football. And it seems like he's growing on the Miami coaches.
Yeah, let me ask you, how big was he when you saw him?
Height-wise, or because he was skinny?
Just in general.
I would say probably about 5'11", maybe 160, 165. He needed to put some weight on, but he had the speed right on fields where there was a lot of speed. I believe I saw him play against Homestead last year. He made some big plays in that game. At Homestead was loaded, and he was always, at least in the games that I went to, was making big plays in Dade County, right? And again, Robbie Washington was probably still the best player on the team offensively, but Barney was playing both sides of the field. And I want to say he had a big interception against Columbus. Some of these facts I may be off on, but I went to probably 4 Palmetto games last year. And he did need to put some weight on, but the speed was not a concern whatsoever. And they were playing him all over the field. And he was just, again, you go to these high school games. You and I have been going to games forever. And I didn't necessarily know I knew he was an underclassman. They were telling me he was someone to watch out for. But to me, he was one of the best players, if not the best player on the field. He was out there every game.
Look, I saw him walking around. That's why I asked, because I didn't see him in pads, but he was pretty tall, I'll say tall, but he wasn't short.
Lanky.
He looked like a
No,
small
he
guy.
definitely wasn't short.
He looked like a guy that when he gets some weight on, he's going to be a nice size player. Not a huge receiver, but not a small receiver. Not like a slot receiver. He's good size, outside guy who can play in the slot, but not a slot by necessity. With him, like you mentioned, versatility. I think he also played a lot of wildcat quarterback as well.
Yep.
So you're talking about a guy playing wildcat. They hand him the ball. He catches the ball. He returns. He plays defense. The versatility, the fact that he has good length, speed, playmaking, and then he went to camp and really showed what he can do. There's a 4-star player on the composite, so it's not like he's a nobody. Texas A&M wants him bad. I think Nebraska wants him bad. Those are the teams in the mix with him. But Miami saw him in camp, and they said, wow, this guy's a lot better than we thought. Seeing him up close and seeing what he did and some of his route running, his quickness out of his breaks, and the speed. So I think he became a much bigger priority for Miami after seeing him live. Wide receiver, there's a need there. I personally thought they should have taken more last year when you had the Micah Mazes, the Andy Jeans, guys like that. You can't – it's one thing to lose on the Brandon Innes's of the world, but you can't lose on that second class, which guys might end up being the best receiver in the of the class. So I think this year they're trying to correct that. A guy like Ja'Cory Barney, he goes to Texas A&M and ends up being an all-SEC player, or goes to Nebraska and is all Big Ten, and everybody's wondering what happened. We've seen that story a million times. I think they're trying to avoid that with a guy like Barney. Similarly, on the defensive side of the ball, Romanis Frederic out of St. Thomas Aquinas played Deerfield last year. He's also he projects as a corner, whereas Barney projects as a receiver, but similar background in terms of he played everywhere for Deerfield. He played receiver. He played cornerback. He returned a couple of punts to the house. He's a 6-foot lanky guy, not like a slot corner. This is a true corner with length, but at the same time, quick enough to return punts. He has some speed. He likes to get his hands on receivers. He has ball skills, again, as a receiver by trade, probably majority receiver. Had some great moments against Hakeem Williams last year, FSU signee, 5-star. So this is a guy that Miami had their eye on, but he came to camp and really showed out. I think he might emerge as a target at wide receiver. So the camps have been hit or miss for Miami over the years. I think with Coach Golden, he took too many bad guys from the camp, and a lot of the real talented future NFL guys, your Forrest Lamps, your Paxton Lynches, your Isaiah McKenzie's, your Brandon Powell's, those guys did not come to Miami, or we just didn't offer them. So there's a lot of talent at those camps. They just didn't go to Miami. I think with Cristobal, he's hoping for a lower number, higher hit rate with a guy like Barney and Romanis, who I should mention is committed to West Virginia. So that would need to be a flip situation. But Miami's not worried about that. They're going to pursue the best players in South Florida. And those are two names to really watch that could emerge as seniors, and Miami's trying to get in ahead of that trend.
Well, D, I'll say it for you so you don't have to remind me. Like and subscribe. Like this video. Subscribe to the CanesInSight channel. Sign up for the website if you aren't on there already. All of this stuff that we're talking about now is on there, has been on the site for a few hours already before you even are listening to this podcast. So that's where you will get it first. Check out the CanesInSight Shopify for the CanesInSight merch to support us and everything we're doing here. And also just, get fresh with some CanesInSight merchandise. D-Money, anything else you want to add?
Underdog Fantasy, sign up, promo code CIS. You get $100 free to play right away. You can jump into, NBA draft, Major League Baseball. You got to spice the summer up a little bit playing Underdog Fantasy. It's addictive, daily fantasy drafts, pick'ems on stats, all kinds of different games you could play. All you got to do is use the link in the bio or use promo code CIS, $100, no questions asked, and get right to playing.
The bank, D-Money. Thank you as always. And we will be back next week on the CanesInSight podcast.
Go Canes.